Hello, welcome to Transform Math Struggles to Strengths, one concept at a time. Today we're going to look at equations and expressions with division. How would you find the value of A in this equation, and why does this work? Many students struggle with this concept, especially when division is involved. So let's back up and look at a concept that is really foundational to understanding this equation. What is the value of this number? How would you say it? How would you model it? How would you represent it? And what is the value? I think if you talk to a lot of students and adults, a lot of people would say this is 12 thirds. Some people would say 12 divided by 3. But students, especially middle school students who have worked with this a lot in elementary school, might say 12 thirds. So let's move to the document camera and talk about how you can address that. Students are familiar with improper fractions, and if you give them blocks and ask them to model this, they may use division, but more likely they are going to do something like this. They will start with 4 wholes, and they will divide them into thirds, and they will count until they get 12 thirds. So this is 3 thirds plus another 3 thirds plus another 3 thirds plus another 3 thirds, and now I have 12 thirds. And so the value of this is 4. But the important thing is not that they come up with a value, but they have an understanding. So let's talk a little more about this. When students are determining the value of this and explaining this value, they might say something like 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3 plus another third, and continue this until they reach 4, and they have 12 1/3s. So some students will think of it that way. Some students might say 3 thirds plus 3 thirds plus 3 thirds plus 3 thirds equals 12 thirds. But no matter which of these ways they do it, what they're really doing is thinking 12 times 1/3, or 1/3 times 12, is equal to 4. Now, that is an important part of division. And when we talk about division, we really can talk about partitive or quotative. But with students, and we can use that vocabulary, but with students in middle school, what they learned in elementary school with division is really you're focusing on the size of the group or the number in each group. So, or you're focusing on the number of groups. So the number in each group or the number of groups. Let's back up and look at it another way also. So when I get to this point, I might ask students, what would be a way to say this in words rather than mathematical symbols? And when I think of multiplication, there are different ways it can be represented. But the example I give to students at this point would be something like, if you have 2 groups of 5, how many would you have? So 2 groups of 5 is 10. And if you had 8 groups of 2, it would be 16. And you ask them several questions that are fairly simple. And what they start to see is what you're really doing when you're finding groups of something is you're multiplying. That doesn't change when we have a fraction. So if we now have 1/3 of 12 equals 4, does that make it easier to represent? Let's think about how we could do that. So now if I think of 1/3 of 12, it doesn't really matter. These are Cuisenaire rods from hand to mind. I will put that at the end. But I love the flexibility of it doesn't matter. You assign the value. So that can be 12, that can be 12. But what is 1/3 of 12? And we know that if we're finding 1/3 of 12, we're dividing it. That's the same as 12 divided by 3. We're dividing it into 3 equal groups. And each group is 4. So my solution is 4. And what they start to see is they think of this as a fraction, but they start to see it as division. And that is really important. If students haven't made that connection in 5th grade, it's going to be very challenging to work on expressions and equations with division. So taking a step back and doing that will, I think, really help. It's helped me in the past. So once they get to this point, they start to see this really is 12 divided by 3. Now, yes, we know that's a sign for division. We know the history of it, but students probably don't, and they need to start recognizing it both ways. Once students understand the concept of a fraction as division, or they understand that this can be represented as a divided by 5 equals 6, then you can start to move students from concrete to representational to abstract using manipulatives and using representations or drawings so that they really understand this concept and it becomes much easier for them to apply. So, if we were going to solve this first problem, we could take a block and divide it into 5 equal groups. Now, I don't know the value of this, but I do know that it's A, and I do know that 1/5 of it, or when I divide it into 5 parts, each group is 6. So if I want to find the value of A, what do I have to do? I need actually all 5 of these, right, to find the value of A. So I'm taking this 6 and I'm multiplying it by 5. And that's what I'm doing here too. So now I know that A is equal to 6 times 5, which is 30. So students start to understand why we're multiplying by 5. And so what happens if you have this? X divided by 4 equals 9. So if this is my X, when I divide it by 4, one of those parts is 9. 1/4 of X is 9. So if I want to find the value of X, I need all of the parts. So I'm multiplying that by 4 because I need all of them. Whoops, sorry. So now I know that X equals 36. Let's go back to the original problem. What would be your first step in finding a solution? And once we understand that when you take A plus 15 and you divide it into 6 equal parts, then one of those parts is equal to 4, it becomes much easier to represent using a visual model. So students can then start to say, you could still build it, but they could also draw, and they could say this box is going to represent A plus 15. And I know if I divide that into 6 equal parts, and we're not going to get too picky about the size, then each one of those is 4. So how do I find the value of a plus 15? Well, I know these are equal. So I just say, I'm going to multiply this 4 times 6. I'm going to multiply this whole equation times 6, or this expression. And now I know that a plus 15, or 24, is equal to a plus 15. Now, how to solve that? There are lots of ways to do that, and we will talk about that in another video. You can use algebra tiles. You can use these Cuisenaire rods. You can do some pictures and drawings. There are lots of ways that you can do this, and we'll talk more about just equations with variables in another video. But I hope that this will be helpful. I think when you take it back to what does that actually mean, then students will start to have a strategy. And once they get here, that is much easier to solve and much less intimidating. Thank you so much for your time today. I really hope this was helpful. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe so that you can get all of our future episodes. Also, if you have ideas for transforming math struggles to strengths one concept at a time, if there's a concept that you would like to see, then please let us know and visit our website at www.amazingminds.com. You can find a way to email us there and let us know what you'd like to see. Thank you again so much.